Kovatch, the Associate Program Director for the Blue Ridge Music Center. I'd like to welcome you to the discussion series of Place in the Band, Women in Bluegrass and American Roots Music. This series is part of a project by the Blue Ridge Music Center that began in 2020 to honor the 100th anniversary of women being granted the right to vote. A Place in the Band celebrates the triumphs and explores the struggles faced by women in bluegrass and American roots music. In this discussion series, North Carolina singer, songwriter, and social activist Laurelyn Dossett speaks with women in the music business, including musicians and others involved in music management and promotion roles. Through these conversations, the women share their stories, talking about their role models, mentors, and inspirations, experiences with people they've worked with, issues they've encountered that are specific to women in the industry, changes they've seen over the years, and other parts of their own personal journeys that have helped them to be who they are today. These individual stories shows the collective strength and future possibilities for women in bluegrass and American roots music. I hope you enjoy the series, and thank you for joining us.
Hello, today I'm excited to introduce you to Ruth Ungar of the Mammals. Unlike a lot of the other women in this series who hail from the South and come out of a bluegrass and sort of Southern folk tradition, Ruth represents more of our Northeastern United States folk royalty. She's the daughter of Jay Ungar and singer Lyn Hardy. She's gone on to have an amazing career of her own as a singer, songwriter, and multi-instrumentalist. And like a lot of the other women in this project, she does a lot of things. She's been a record producer. She runs a festival that's out of Ashoken. She's a mom. She's a wife. She's had several collaborations, including Mike and Ruthy and Sometymes Why. It was a real pleasure to talk to her at the end of 2020 about all the things that have happened this year and her hopes for the future. My name is Laurelyn Dossett, and here's Ruth Ungar. When you were a kid, did you think much about whether you would end up being a musician, or was there ever a time you were like, I think I'm going to go, be an engineer or something?
Oh yeah, no, that's a great question. No, I don't think very many kids want to do what their parents do.
No.
Like as a kid, I think that it does happen later because it's what you grew up knowing about. And so either a talent or a certain proclivity is just there, but it's not usually what you want to do. And so I'm a perfect example there. I wanted to be really anything but a folk musician as far as when I grew up, but yeah, I really got into theater.
Okay.
And not even particularly musical theater, although I did a lot of musicals too, but I liked acting in general and studied Shakespeare and stuff like that. So eventually that's how I met Mike, actually. We met because he was also a theater guy and we had a lot of friends in common. But then music was like this sort of side escape from that theater focus. So it ended up feeling like this fun thing as opposed to like the main thing I was working on. And then that just flip-flopped and shifted, and I really haven't done much theater since I was like 23 at this point.
Wow. But I'd be interested in hearing also what impact you feel like studying acting and that sort of formal storytelling, what impact that may have had on your songwriting and your storytelling in that form.
Oh yeah, well I think for real the storytelling aspect of what I do is the most direct line to my theater training by far, because learning how to breathe life into the written word that someone else wrote is really good practice for writing. Really things that are visual, sensory, and personal and vulnerable are what is interesting.
Right.
Hands down. If it's safe, might be okay, but it's not going to be really major and get people. If it takes a risk, if it might fall on its face, that's exciting. Like someone taking a shred in a bluegrass solo that they've taken 30 times. I don't even, I'm like, it goes in one ear and out the other. If they go out on a limb and actually lose where they are for a second or play a wrong note, like I prefer that. To me, that's craftsmanship. Yeah. That's exciting, and obviously if you can take the risks and still nail it and not play a wrong note, I guess that's even the ultimate goal. But I'd still, I shy away from safe, and I guess in writing, my instinct is still like I'm an intellectual writer, and often I write too many things that are thoughts and not images. Mm-hmm. So it's not like I've fully accomplished the goal of always bringing visual, personal, vulnerable things to every line in a song, but it's my goal for sure.
I hear you. I understand.
Yeah, and I like being able to be on stage and deliver a song. If I wrote it, if Mike wrote it, if somebody else wrote it, that like where to look with your eyes, what to do with your hands, your lungs, your feet, your knees, like all that, like performing with every cell and embodying your text and, allowing it to affect you so that it can affect someone else. Like all that is like my very favorite stuff. Subway train from here to heaven. Ride my ferry boat up my muddy river.
So let me ask this. I hear that you went to theater school, you met Mike, you guys started playing music kind of more for fun than, as a career goal. How did it happen that, was there a decision made that you were going to head down a musical path career-wise, or did it? Maybe
at the time it felt like a slow process, but looking back, it was like a couple of months or something. We started a band with our friend Carter Little, who now lives in Nashville and does music direction and supervision work, and it's just like a really cool friend that we still have. But at that point, the three of us were like 22. We started this little band. Carter was into roots music. Mike was maybe, knew Bob Dylan and not as folky as he got. Carter had like Jody Stecker and Kate Brislin albums and my folks albums, right. Like, CDs. This was 1998. So yeah, it was a cool moment of connection with somebody who knew the music of my parents and their generation of folk and Americana, which wasn't even really a word, so much used around music at that point. And then Mike, who had this very creative, original songwriting drive. And so the three of us were a cool combo. And I pulled a fiddle out of my closet I hadn't played in 6 years at that point. Was like, yeah, this song needs a solo in the middle. And I know I really suck at the fiddle, but like the people in this bar in the Lower East Side don't care how much I suck. Like they go, you're like, yeah, that girl plays the fiddle, woo! Like they really, their standards were much lower than mine. So it enabled me to get a little better. In an atmosphere where I wasn't like really comparing myself to the best. I was just like, comparing myself to anyone else in the bar who couldn't play any fiddles. It was a really fun turning point right there. It was like, Avenue A, New York City, little open mics and stuff like that. And then when we left New York, less than a year later, it was, pretty much we started the Mammals, like kind of right there. Yeah.
Wow. Who else were you listening to besides, the music that you grew up hearing with your parents?
Richard Buckner at that point was like the big one. I've always loved his music, and sometimes there would be like a pedal steel and like a great like far off fiddle rhythm and a lilt in his voice that made me think of Ginny Hawker or Alice Gerrard or somebody. I'm like, okay, this guy is real hip and like, I mean, I wouldn't say he's like huge and mainstream, but like people who listen to him didn't necessarily know that roots music, but I'm like, I can tell he does. And it really felt cool to me. I loved
I'm
listening
going to have to
that.
look him up. I don't know that name. Yeah, that's
Richard
awesome.
Buckner, Gillian Welch. Like, that was like, she was new and he was new to me,
Right.
you know?
Yeah.
And so those were the two things that formed my listening world at that point.
Yeah, I remember getting that first Gillian Welch record and never turning back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
In doing some research for talking to you today, you know, just looking at the different bands you've played with and the different incarnations of Mike and Ruthy and the Mammals and things over the years, I had forgotten about Sometymes Why, your collaboration with Aoife and Kristin.
Yeah.
How did that experience, just working with, you know, your girlfriends basically, how was that different than your other band experiences?
Well, that's a great question. Aoife and Kristin and I, you know, I think of us as just individuals, as people. The music and what we were doing to an audience, I think, was affected by the fact that we were all women. But, you know, I don't know. That's a really hard question. Kristin was in Uncle Earl, which was also this all-girl band, as they say, you know, and but Aoife and I at the time were not. Like, Crooked still didn't have Brittany in it yet, so you know, we were in all boy bands essentially, except for ourselves. So I think for us, we were a little more starved for that feeling, and not to be cliche, but when you do a show with other women, it can be kind of fun to like coordinate what you're going to wear. I've met male musicians who care about that stuff, but
you're not married to one?
Not so much. I mean, he cares so much that he only is going to wear the thing he wears. So it's going to be that, you know, so I can kind of work around it. And occasionally it's like brown or blue, but like, you know, it's not a lot of, I think,
well, you're going back to the theater now.
Yeah. And I guess for me, growing up, harmony was such like a focal point for what music is, you know, and Mike is an incredible songwriter and just like this pure creative force and this musician that, you know, we just have like a natural chemistry to combine musical ingredients and whatnot on stage, but and in the studio, but he's not a natural harmonizer. He can learn a harmony, or I can sing harmony with him and have so much fun doing that. But to sing, particularly with Aoife, has always been like next level. It's something I really crave occasionally in my life, like to sing with someone who's at least as good or better than me at singing harmony. So there's like certain other levels. It's like going skiing with other people who can do black diamond slopes, and you're not like waiting around for your, you know, or like, it's just more fun. Right. It's just, you know, and by the way, I'm a terrible skier. I'm not a good skier, but I'm like a black diamond harmonizer, you know, like Amy Helm is another one of those, like, who, when we sing together, it feels like when I sing with Aoife, like in a big finale, and we're looking at each other and being like, where are you going to go? Because I'll try and go here. And then we both, you know, you'll do that where you jump on the same thing and then you both jump. You both like, wait, and it's just fun. It's like a game. It's like tennis or something. Why do I keep relating it to sports? There is something athletic about it, or something. It's that was really fun. And Kristin is amazing and also a great harmony singer, and really had the three of us had that fun experience that where you go, okay, wait, now let's try it with you on the high part, you on the low part. Okay, now let's flip. Okay, which sounded better? Like, I just love to do that. It's such a fun part of the process to be like, we all could sing that high, we all could sing that low, but when you move people around, just the quality of that tone in a different place, I mean, it's just, So fun. So
I
fun.
get it. I have several female singing partners that, well, not just female singing partners, but that there is some sort of special sister quality to it that I feel the
Yeah.
same way. And when I get it, it's like, oh, that's right. I forgot how good that feels.
Yeah.
um, so
Yeah. I'm trying to get our kids to be able to like be confident and sing harmonies. They do it when they're not thinking about it, but when I ask them to do it, they don't want to do it. And
yeah,
But that's going to be the next thing. Like, or my mom and I just told you we did a little Hank Williams tribute last week, and it was just so fun to sing with her because she's another one. That's where I learned it.
right.
That's where I got it. And it's so fun to sing with her. We haven't really been in the same room too much this year, but we've done it enough this month that we were like, we're just gonna sing. We're just gonna do it. Sing in the same room. So far, everybody's still healthy.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
One of the things that we've been talking about in this series is that whole idea of gender parity and other sorts of diversity parity on our stages, and how so I have two questions about that. One is, what is your thought about that as you program the Hoots, the winter and summer festivals? And the other is, what has been your experience over time with who we're seeing on stages, and has it changed or not?
Well, that's cool. We definitely have always worked to look at that balance in a festival lineup. I find it embarrassing when it's really out of whack and I'm looking at one of those posters and I'm like, where's oh, there she is. Okay. Oh, there's another one. Yeah, those posters.
I do.
We care about that. When you put that poster out, what is it? Who do you have there? And it's not just gender parity, but we we live in a really white part of New York State, I guess, and
Yeah.
and a genre, Americana and folk, that is so white. So we're doing our best to, just have any kind of diversity. That seems to be more of a focus for us in the past couple of years than gender, because we've kind of had the gender thing on our mind when we started, and hopefully already baked that into our process a little bit.
Right.
But I do think it's evolved a little. I think it's just not, I think anytime you're trying to have more people of color or more women in your program, there's this balancing act between placing somebody that like is a token, or tokenizing someone, and I'm trying to sort of study how to navigate that the best that I can. Mike predominantly books the Hoot, but I like to recommend people,
Mm-hmm.
So I think,
I'll ask
I don't know that in my lifetime, I don't know that I've really perceived a big change happening, to be honest, but it has. I know it has. I think that when you look for it, it's frustrating and you don't see it. But when you look back and you see how even worse it was, then you see that something has happened. It's like watching a movie from the 80s that I grew up with and didn't realize was sexist. And now I'm like, hey, wow, that just happened in this movie. Oh, yeah.
Right.
That was the norm. And it can be horrifying or it can be inspiring, because you're like, wow, that really wouldn't be in a movie right now. I think part of the problem is that women, I want more. I don't just want there to be some women. I want there to be women who aren't just the singer and also that they also like play an instrument, or that it's not one woman surrounded by men on stage, which is what I did, and still do in the Mammals, or that it isn't an all woman band that is like, that's like this novelty that, that's part of their identity. Like, that shouldn't be a fact about a band.
Right.
Maybe that's what I loved about meeting the Ducks when we were on tour in the old days, is they were a 5-piece band that had 2 women in the band, and one of them was the lead singer, who didn't really play any instruments, but there was a fiddle player in the band who was also a woman, and an incredible musician. And I grew up in an era where it was politically correct to say that you didn't see color, or that you didn't see, maybe gender or something. And I know now, I'm relieved to know that, like, that doesn't really work, that you should see it, just not in a horrible way. You should
Right.
see it. You should allow someone's, visual traits to exist, to not have that be the main thing about the person. If they're not white and not a man, that is not interesting to me. That is not the most interesting thing about them. That can't be the main first couple adjectives that you use to describe that musician, or it shouldn't be. And when you're going out to try and make your festival more diverse, it is what you're looking for. But in the end, you got to be excited about the music and the creativity and the spirit and the, everything you would be excited about for anybody you're hiring.
Right.
Yeah.
Part of the premise of this whole symposium and the that we're even having a conference about women in the business, is that it has been traditionally harder for women, and that it is changing. Your trajectory was somewhat different in that you grew up in your family and things, it doesn't sound like you had to butt your head against anything to be a woman in music, or I don't want to put words in your, huh?
No, I think you're right. And in starting the Hoot, we really admired Pete and Toshi Seeger, who started the Clearwater Festival that I grew up going to, and my dad booked a stage there when I was young. And they're an example of a couple in music, which I guess was the other thing I was going to say, is like, when you're looking through the poster and each woman is like, oh, well, she's there because she's attached to that man, that kind of thing. But truly, Toshi was a real force of nature, a business person, someone who enabled Pete to be Pete.
A real partner.
What's that?
A real partner, real collaborator.
Yeah, and a very strong festival organizer who really had these high ideals and values, and was someone that inspired tons of men, women to do what they did and make that festival happen. So yeah, and I think I really do in many ways take after my dad, who also is a business guy, like started a music and dance camp, has really been creative through the years as a musician and what he does, and learned at an early age that you really should do what people want to hear, that there's this balance between what's right and what's personal and what's creative to you, which is also super valuable. And then just like actually like reading evaluation forms, giving people a thing they want, realizing that if everybody cheers real hard at that song, like, you should play that song every night. That's cool. Being, I guess, and to me, like, that's like a spiritual connection to your fans, but it's also like a business move, right? And I guess where I'm going is like, I had the support of my dad and the wisdom of his many years in the business to bring to bear. So I don't feel like I butted my head against anything. Like if anything, people are excited that there's a woman doing a thing and they welcome you in. Yeah. In my personal experience. As far as being a woman in the music business, have I had like horrible, sleazy Me Too moments? Oh, hell yeah. Yeah. like I was always the person like counting out at the end of the night, like merch or being paid for the band. Like in the early days, I was just like, I was the wallet, you know, and I was like that person at the end of the show. And like, you know, if you've been in a band, like you don't have like a different person getting paid every night. Like that's stupid. Sure. It's that person's job to do merch. It's that person's job to do this, you know. So they'd go to pay Tao or they'd go to pay Mike and they'd be like, I'll go to Ruth. Oh, she holds the purse string. Like that kind of annoying,
right,
rude response to that. Like I didn't even hear it after a while. It's like, you know, whatever. I don't really care about that. But what I'm getting at is like that would happen. And then I remember
the assumptions that the money must go through a man. Yeah.
Yeah. Or that if it goes through a woman, there's some funny joke there that needs to be made. And then like I can picture like sitting, counting out in Woodstock, right up the road, and this sleazy dude who'd had too much to drink grabbing my knee under the table while I counted. Mm-hmm. And me just looking at him. I didn't have to do a damn thing. So he just sees the look on my face and he knows like he's about to get like just destroyed if he like thinks that that's a move. Like what? But like, yeah, I remember Me Too movement happened. People were telling their stories and I was like, oh, that's a good one. But people are like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm like, honey, like that's nothing. It's nothing compared to the things that happen every day to people, to women, because they're women, you know? So while I say, in a business sense, I don't feel like being a woman has ever held me back or that I've butted my head against a glass ceiling or anything. Mm-hmm. I still have the experience of being a woman, like a human being that is, you know, female identifying in a man's world, just generally.
I would say I have experienced similar things. And I think what's so sad about it is that we so take it for granted. You know, that it's just like, well, of course that happened, you know, and that does also seem to be getting better. It seems to happen less. And when it does happen, it's fine to call the guy out on it. And your peers are probably going to call the guy out on it too. You know, it feels a little better in that way, but
I agree. I do agree. I do.
Yeah. I remember in my first interview with Rhiannon, that was one of the points that she made too, that until we have more women in all aspects of the field, you know, we will not make it. It's not just more women on the stage, it's more women behind the scenes, programming the stage, producing, all of this. So yeah, I agree. Well, and it sounds like you're actually, like quite a few of the women that I've talked to in the series, you're doing a lot of those things yourself. You know?
Yeah, well, our recording engineer who and co-producer on a lot of our albums, Adam Armstrong, who lives up here in Kingston, he has, you know, spent a lot of the last, you know, 8 years, which is how old our daughter is, here, setting up and recording us in this space. And he has been really encouraging to her since she could crawl. Like she had her own knobs over here and her own like stuff. And then she got old enough to realize those weren't doing anything. Those weren't plugged in. And then she just like, you know, she's like, all right, I see what you've been doing. But it's really, to me, it's not only seeing women in those positions, but seeing men who don't act like it's weird that you're a girl that's interested in it.
Yeah.
That's part of it. You know, growing up, my mom was told she couldn't play the drums because it wasn't ladylike. She was told she couldn't play the trumpet because it wasn't a lady's instrument. Like she wanted to be in the marching band and, you know, she ended up in a short skirt twirling a baton, you know? Right. So that story comes to me from her, you know, and then to see my little girl crawling around the studio being like, yeah, play with that compressor. Like, you know, you want to, you want to adjust the trim on that, or like, or going over to the drums and being like, yeah, like, just go ahead, that's different. That's different. I mean, that's taken a couple generations, I guess, but it's about people, men or women, in positions of power, just opening their eyes, and Adam's only a couple, I don't know, maybe 10 years or so younger than Mike and I, but I can even see in his generation, I guess you'd say, a little bit of difference there.
Yeah. What's inspiring you?
I really feel like I'm at a turning point with that question of who's inspiring me or what's inspiring. Remember that point where a lot of people, myself included, posted a black square on Instagram or social media and just said like, okay, Black Lives Matter, and we're not going to post our lunch today because that's tacky right now.
Right.
And I feel like that was the minimum of what was being said by that black square. I still feel stopped in my tracks at that day. It's hard to find inspiration in what I did before that day. I wrote a song in April. I wrote another song. It was called Mama Don't Feel Good. You probably like it. I'll send it to you. I also wrote another one. I wrote another song like a couple weeks ago called The Doldrums. It's really got a vibe going. I'm
seeing a pattern.
I don't feel like the work is really the same anymore. Shouldn't be the same. And I'm just open to see what's next.
I understand.
I've been learning a lot about, when we mentioned Me Too and the idea of being a woman and how that affects your experience or experiences of being threatened or underestimated, laughed at or underappreciated or all that. The experience of women that's different from the experience of men is not really mostly created by women, right? So it's like we experience it, but we're the like the recipient of it. Like if you look at an issue like teen pregnancy or domestic violence, and the term battered women and things that maybe people don't even say anymore. This imagery of women's issues or women's whatever, suffrage even, or suffering. And really it's about men. So they're not being talked about as much as the women are being talked about, but for every teen pregnancy, there was probably a man.
Right.
And, we could go on from there. So really, I'm hoping to somehow, as a parent of a daughter and a son, like learn from that experience and communicate that experience of teaching how we're all the same. And because I think that's what unity stems from, is seeing ourselves in other people. I'm inspired by the idea of inspiring unity across perceived differences. And so just like all these women's issues are as much or more men's issues.
Right.
And the solution to them is as much in the hands of men as it is in the hands of women. I feel the same with looking at the Black Lives Matter movement. It's or just looking at racism. Race, I've been learning about it and to the extent to which it really doesn't exist in the way we think it exists, it's invented. It's been invented, over hundreds of years, such that it now exists, but it's not what we think it is. Racism for sure exists, and the idea of there being having to be something that's called Black history is really ridiculous. Like, that is also white history, because it's the history of what white people were doing to Black people. That's a big part of it. So what we really need is history, all history, and until that happens, we need Black History Month for sure.
Right.
But, the idea that world music is a term, like, all that is where my head is at. And that isn't really about like the future of music, but for me, what we sing about has to matter, so I could sing about a little flower blooming on the hillside, and that matters to me, and I hope I still write songs like that. But we've always written about bigger issues, Mike and I think we're both facing a bit of writer's block right now, because we can see how much some new songs are needed, and how delicate it is to write the real perfect one. So
yeah,
we're not even talking about this, but I see it in the way he's not writing songs, let's put it that way. And I see it in the way it's like hard to I'm just in a learning phase, and I want to stay in that phase and write the songs that come. And then, and really think about it. And then, our environment is also really first and foremost on our minds as we think about, well, we didn't fly 7 people to Australia and back, and that would have been a big carbon footprint. So
right.
Dodged a bullet there maybe for Mother Earth, and maybe our life of touring around in a diesel van, maybe it is in some ways, I don't know, selfish, or,
I hear you. We don't know what the new model is going to be, but it's not going to be the same.
And I'm grateful for aspects of this freeze, that it's forcing a more of a focus on stuff that we push under the rug generally. So whether that be social justice or the environment, or just reacquainting yourself with your family or yourself, I'm really grateful for all that, more than I should be, I almost think. Like, I really wouldn't trade it. I know it's horrible to say, and people have died, and I would not wish that to happen again. But
it's like the reset button.
The reset button is a great way to put it. And I mean, anything that knocks you down or stops you in your tracks, you'll notice something about where you are instead of speeding right through it. And I think we've all really taken a closer look.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I hope.
Yeah. Well, listen, I look forward to hearing where you are with that later. So we'll circle back around, because I have a feeling you won't be able to remain silent for long. And it's been a pleasure to talk to you today, and thank you for your work and for sharing your time and your stories with us.
Well, thanks so much for including me and thinking to reach out. It's been interesting to experience so much of our lives as we are right now in 2 dimensions, but there's been something 3-dimensional about this experience for sure. So
very good. I appreciate it. Alrighty. Well, happy New Year. Stay warm.
All right, great.
Alrighty.
Good luck with everything.
Bye-bye.
as you can. You gotta be as light as you can. You gotta be as sweet as you can. You gotta be as strong as you can.